Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the shop. This week's video, we're going to talk about the Lamello system, and hopefully I'll give you some tips and tricks that can help you. Here we go. Alright, so we did a video on the Lamello Zeta P2 sometime last year. There's definitely some things that I would like to add to that video that I kind of missed. So we're just going to do a new one. Going to cover some things that I didn't cover before, show you how easy this thing is to use and how versatile it can be. And then we also have the classic X, which is just the regular biscuit joiner, which I use a ton. I really do. I use a lot. I do obviously get a kickback when you guys buy Lamellos through me, so I really appreciate you guys. There's been a lot of interest in them lately and a lot of good questions, so I want to cover that stuff today. But I also want to mention that, like, I bought both of these machines and I use them. I mean, I use them every day in the shop. So let's get into it. All right, so what these things are, the Lamello Classic X. This is a regular biscuit joiner. It cuts slots in the edge of your wood piece, and you can insert these wooden biscuits to keep your pieces aligned. I'm gonna kind of assume you guys know what these generally do, but we'll just cover really quickly. And so the Lamello Zeta P2 is a little more complex. It shoots slots for these plastic biscuits. We've got a few different types that I use. There's another system, the Divario, which I'm not going to cover because I've never actually used them yet. So what I use the most are these Tenso connectors. They're plastic and they snap together. Each one of these provides 30 pounds of clamping pressure, and they are amazing. And then we have the Clamex connectors, and these have this hex key that goes in the side, and this piece comes out and it clamps the two pieces together. These provide up to 200 pounds of clamping pressure, and they are incredible. The downside to these, well, not the downside, but what makes these different is if you have a face frame with a bunch of tensos in it and you snap them together, it's going to be very difficult to take it apart. If you have a face frame put on with Clamex connectors, you can go and unloosen the hex key and take this apart, or a filler or something like that, something that you want to put together in the shop and then permanently put together in the field. Obviously, once you put glue, you're not going to be able to take it back apart once the glue sets up. So you need to think about these things as they're acting as clamps until the glue sets up, right? So we're always putting glue. There might be certain times using the Clamex connector where you're not going to put glue, but for the most part, these things are acting as clamps. So the cutter goes in, and it has this special cutter in here, and it goes in, and at the end it does a little wobble, and so it makes this groove so that these can slide in. And the Zeta P2 can also be used as a regular biscuit joiner as well. You can take the cutter out, and the cutter actually removes pretty easy. So you can take the cutter out, put a normal biscuit joiner cutter in there, use it like that as well. The reason I have both is because I use both of them so much, and if I had to change the cutter back and forth a bunch of times during the day, it's really going to slow things down. So it makes sense for me to have both. So now that we've kind of covered the basics of these things, let's get into the more detailed stuff. So there are tons of applications to use these machines. We're just going to assume I'm using the Zeta P2 today, because a lot of this stuff is kind of the same, where you can use the Classic X the same way. It's obviously just shooting a different biscuit. So I've been getting a lot of questions from you guys wanting to see how I use this, specifically with like face frames, and a lot of good questions. So I thought it deserved a video to really go into detail with how I use this machine. So if I'm doing face frame cabinets, inset cabinets, I am typically making my face frames flush with the inside of the box. And so that's a pretty easy setup, right? I'm just gonna lay my face frame on top of my box, mark for some biscuit slots, and then I will cut the slots. And this is a perfect time to mention, and I know I do in pretty much every one of my videos, but if you guys are interested in one of these, shoot me an email. It's in the description below. We'll get you set up with the team over at Lamello. Great people, and they will answer any questions you have, send you the pricing, all that good stuff, and then you'll have access to a rep directly through the company. So now that I have my slots cut for the for my face frame, now I'm gonna add my biscuits. So for this, I'm just gonna use these Biscos. These are plastic biscuits that are wide and they fit in the larger groove. And these are just nice if you're want to put your piece on and make sure everything is lined up nice without snapping it together with tensos or something. These are really good because you can just put them in and you can check, make sure everything is aligned, and then it comes apart easily. And obviously these are reusable and you can keep reusing them in the future. I bought a couple of years ago a small box of these and I've been using them, I mean, over and over since. So, all right, so then obviously there's my face frame piece and boom, nice and flush. So what do we do in a case where it's not going to be flush here? So there's a few different applications, and I actually have one on a cabinet right behind you. And so let's take a look at that. All right, so here is a large upper cabinet for a job that we're working on right now. This is all just primed. It's not finished painted yet, but it's inset. And so how do you get the doors to not go in? You obviously need a door stop behind them. So what I like to do is use the edge of my plywood to be the doorstop. So there's obviously an offset. My face frame's not flush. On the inside, on my sides, my face frame is flush, but on my tops and bottoms, I have this 3/8 offset. So how do we do that? Integrate your cabinet box to be your doorstop, so then you don't have to add in a little block or something like that. Now, there's obviously some cases where this probably wouldn't work, but in this case it does work. So let me show you how I do this. All right, so here you can see the 3/8 drop in my plywood here, and that's going to act as my doorstop. Now I actually have my face frame is actually thicker than my door as well, because I'm going to add a bumper to the back of my door, and I want that to be nice and flush, so it'll be like that. But anyways, obviously the edge of your plywood here needs to be edge banded, so you're not looking at raw plywood. And then this cabinet in particular has another box on top of it, and so we have some spacers in between. With that cabinet, like I just showed you, there is a solid piece of wood in between them, and so that was nice because it gave me a nice piece to biscuit into. But if I just have the edge of my plywood here, which is edge banded, and I want to do this and have a 3/8 reveal there, I've got to think about the back side of this because I don't really have enough room here to put one of those large Clamex or Tenso connectors in here because I only have 3/8. So what I would have to do is add another piece of solid wood to the top or the backs on the back side of my box to give me more meat to go into with the biscuit joiner, and then this will work. So let's do that. So this doesn't need to be anything crazy. I just have some roux glue putting on there and then brad nailing it on, making sure I'm staying far enough away from the edge so I don't blast any nails with my biscuit joiner. All right, so now we've got our piece attached. Again, let's assume that this is the top of our cabinet and we just added this piece on just to give us some extra backing for our face frame piece. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this on like this and mark it like I normally would on both pieces. I'm gonna shoot the biscuits in my face frame piece normal with just the flip down plate. And so that's all set. And now for this, I need to get a 3/8 reveal here. So to get a 3/8 reveal, we're gonna bring out our adjustable plate. So what this does, this flips up, and it's important to note because you're gonna have to do a little bit of math. Now, obviously this thing is set up all metric, but if you just measure from the bottom of your plate to, there's a line here on the side, and that tells you the center of your cutter. So it's 3/8, a tiny bit heavy. I need to set my plate to 3/4, a little bit heavy. And so I'll slide this on and then clamp this down, and now we'll shoot our biscuit slots in our top piece. Okay, so now you can see where those are at, and I'm obviously referencing the inside of my cabinet. You always are referencing the same surface when you're doing these. All right, so now take your biscos or your tensos or whatever you're going to be using, put them in there. Snap them in, and now you've got that 3/8 offset. Right on 3/8 of an inch. All right, so now what do you do if you have a face frame and this is the inside of my box on this side, and the face frame actually hangs over the box, over the edge of the box? Well, it's essentially the same thing that we just did for this application that we're going to do for this application. So I'll take my part, mark the biscuit slots. So we'll say it's going to be a 3/8 offset again. So I already have the plate on my biscuit joiner. So what we're doing now is we're just shooting, instead of shooting this offset in my plywood, this is going into my face frame now, and then I'm going to take this off and set it up with the flip down plate to shoot into my plywood. All right, so now you can see we've got our piece here and we've got our 3/8 reveal on the back of the face frame. Now obviously if it's a 1/4 inch reveal or a 1/2 inch reveal, you're going to need to adjust your plate to your different offset that you're going for, and then you will, you'll come out with this. And there's another way to do this, which I'll show you now. So say you have, you've got a full kitchen, you've got 5 or 6 face frames laid out that you got to shoot biscuits in. You have some that are flush, and like I said, like on my cabinets, I had the sides were flush and the top and bottoms have the 3/8 reveal, and you don't want to keep switching back and forth between the flip down plate on your biscuit joiner and the adjustable plate that slides on. So if we don't want to keep switching back and forth, I've got a little trick so that you don't have to. All right, so what I've got a bunch of these little, this is a piece of 1/4 inch MDF. I've got it in 3/8, I've got it in 1/2 inch. You can mill up solid if you have like a weird offset, 5/16 or something like that. And it's just a little spacer that's gonna go under my plate. And so I'll show you how we're gonna do this. So say I want a 1/4 inch reveal. I've got my piece, so I'm going to take my piece and I'm going to do this and just mark the biscuit slots. And for this, in this case, we'll say the face frame is going to hang over the box like we just did. So I'm going to set my plate to the 3/8 plus that 1/4 inch. So it's 3/8 heavy, plus the 1/4 inch, it'll be 5/8 heavy, and that will give me that. So I'm going to take my plate and I'm going to shoot this out. And so now I'm going to take this 1/4 inch spacer, instead of removing the plate and putting the flip down plate, I'm going to take this 1/4 inch spacer and put it underneath my plate, and when I shoot into my plywood piece, the biscuit's going to be right where I want, and I'm going to have my perfect 1/4 inch reveal. And then we don't have to go back and forth taking the plate off, flipping the plate down. All right, so then you got your 1/4 inch reveal, and then if you wanted to go shoot like the sides of your box and everything to be flush, you could keep the plate on. You would just have to use the 1/4 inch plate. So in the last video that I did, I know that I didn't show these being used, and these are these little preload clips. So if you've ever had a big face frame that you're trying to snap on and you have a bunch of Lamello tensos to line up, you know it can be kind of tricky to get them all perfectly in line to snap together. So these little preload clips go into the male end, and they just kind of make it a little bit wider, and so it makes them much easier to get everything lined up, and these stay in there. So even with this, it still provides the same amount of clamping pressure. So these things, I'll show you how they work. You basically put them in this little thing here, and then they just slide onto your clip. All right, so that's it for this video, guys. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully this was helpful. I wanted to do this because I have gotten a lot of questions, and I wanted to kind of explain how to do different offsets and stuff like that with this machine. So like I said, hopefully this was helpful, and hopefully you learned something and I answered your questions if you're one of the ones that have been asking. There's obviously a ton more applications to use these machines. I specifically wanted to get into face frames, offsets, things like that, because I didn't cover it much in the last video that I did on this machine. There will be obviously more videos on this coming out because we use it all the time. You guys know, you're always seeing me use it, and I'm a big Lamello guy. I love it. So if you do have more questions, or if I did miss something, be sure to leave them in the comments below. I do see your comments, guys. I know I don't always get back to everybody, but I do try to. Some weeks are just busy. It's getting busy with the kids and their sports and baseball season starting, and yeah, you know, the whole thing. So be sure to like, comment, subscribe. See these shirts, cabinet maker shirts. These are available on my website. It's a great way to support the channel. The Patreon link is below. And that's it. That's all I got. Next week, we'll be back on this project. I wanted to do the hardware video this week for these pocket doors, but we didn't get all the hardware yet. So that video is going to come out next week, and that's going to be a really cool one. I'm excited to install this hardware. Some really nice stuff. So that's all I got for this week's video. See you guys next week.